Good morning. Welcome to United First Parish Church. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your journey, welcome to our Unitarian Universalist spiritual community. I'm the Reverend Rebecca Froom, minister here. Our worship leaders this morning on screen and behind screen are Joan McDonald, our Director of Religious Education, Norman Corey, our music director, and Clyde Courtwright, who's serving as our digital usher this morning. The order of service for this morning can be downloaded from our UFPC website, www.ufpc.org. We will also be pasting hymn lyrics in the chat as we go along. I want to especially welcome any guests we have this morning. You can go to our website to learn more about our congregation and how to connect with us. For our online services, I encourage you to go ahead and leave your video on if you are comfortable with that, so that we can see one another's beautiful faces when folks choose to be in gallery view. But if you're feeling some Zoom fatigue this morning, we totally understand that and feel free to keep your video off. Do what you need to do in order to be most present in our virtual sanctuary this morning. Note that we are recording this morning's service to be posted on YouTube at a later date. We invite everyone to stay after worship today for our virtual social hour, which will include the option of breakout groups to discuss the theme of today's service and other opportunities for connection and conversation. Today, we will also be having our mid-year State of the Congregation informational meeting around 11:45, right after coffee hour. And now let us take a deep breath together, appreciating the gift of this day as we center ourselves for worship with words by Gretchen Haley. There is nothing you need to bring with you to be welcome here. No right beliefs or proof of citizenship, no eternal optimism or clarity of conviction, no boundless courage or endless expertise. You do not need to know what brought you here or how you will solve that problem you are turning over and over in your mind. Your bills do not need to be paid. Your checkbook can be a mess. Your children may have been up half the night. Your hearing aids may not be working and your knees may be creaking. You do not need to be already perfect or even halfway to belong in this circle where grace meets us where we are, but does not leave us as it found us. Where love resides in each of us, yet in somehow more than all, where life still pulses and rages and heals and transforms, creating us in this day anew once again. Come, let us worship.
Everyone is invited to light a chalice. If you go into gallery view, and we will light whatever chalice candles we have this morning with these words by Deborah Burrell. Fire consumes and casts a bright light. May our chalice flame consume our regrets for the past, our fears about the future, and our worries about today. May it light for us a path of joy and peace.
I invite you to join in reading our words of covenant, which will appear on our screen. As a free fellowship of this historic church, We unite to lift our hearts and open our minds to a larger reality, to accept, support, and encourage one another, to seek the wisdom in all religions, and to cherish and sustain the web of life, and to strive for justice, compassion, and peace. Please join me in singing Come, Come, Whoever You Are, words by the Sufi Muslim poet Rumi.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, condemned, worshipper, lover of leaving. Yours is the worshipper, lover is living. Yours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again,
I invite our children to gather around the screen for a children's story this morning. It is titled Beautiful Oops, and it's written by Barney Salzberg.
Hi everyone, it's Miss Emily. Today we're going to read this story called Beautiful Oops by Barney Salzberg. And I think you'll probably be inspired to go and create some art of your own after this. Let's get started. Beautiful oops. Oops! A torn piece of paper is just the beginning. Every spill has lots and lots of possibilities. Look what they created, an elephant. Bent paper is something to celebrate. A little drip of paint lets your imagination run wild. A scrap of paper can be fun to play with. So cute. A smudge and a smear can make magic happen. Oh, magic appear. A stain has potential if you play with its shape. Holes in your paper are worth exploring. See? That is so cool. When you think you have made a mistake, of it as an opportunity to make something beautiful. The end. So friends, I challenge you all to take some time today to be creative and create a beautiful oops of your very own. Thanks for listening.
Let us take a deep breath together as we open our hearts for the sharing of our joys and sorrows. If you wish to briefly acknowledge a joy or a sorrow in your life, I invite you in a moment to raise your hand and unmute your microphone when Clyde calls you by name. As we enter this time of sharing, we light a candle of joy, knowing that a joy shared is a joy magnified, and also a candle of sorrow, knowing that a sorrow shared is a sorrow diminished. Let us open our hearts to one another. Please raise your hand when you're ready to share a joy or a sorrow. Sharing, we light a final candle, representing all of those joys and all of those sorrows that we hold silently in the sanctuary of our hearts. May the light of these candles and the compassion of this community remind us that wherever we are on our journey, each of us is worthy of love, and each of us is able to love. Let us return to that breath of life and love that moves within, between, and beyond us all. I invite you to take a deep breath. Perhaps roll your shoulders back, wiggle your toes. Breathe in, noticing some bit of tension, and then breathe out, easing that tension just a little bit. And in this time where we connect screen to screen and heart to heart, let us enter a time of meditation and stillness. Will you lift your hearts and join me in the spirit of prayer, listening in these words for the language of faith most meaningful to you? Eternal presence, known by many names, known in many ways. We gather this morning, connected, even while we keep a loving distance from one another. We gather on a day of sun and cold, Wind moving through trees, reminding us of the beauty of the earth. We give thanks for the joys of our lives, for times in which we can appreciate the wonder of the natural world. We give thanks for all the movements towards inclusivity and justice in our wider world, in the communities we are part of. In this time of transition and change in our country, many of us are in a time of transition and change in our own lives. May we look to the future with joy and possibility, even as we look honestly at the challenges of the present. We open our hearts to all those who are struggling with their health. May they have strength and healing. We open our hearts to all who are grieving. May they have comfort and peace. We open our hearts to all who are struggling with depression. We open our hearts wishing that everyone might know that they are worthy of love, that they have worth and dignity. And in times where we grieve, shock, may we remember our ability to connect to one another, to help one another through times of challenge and heartache. Spirit of life, spirit of love, in this week, our country reached a tragic milestone of 400,000 lives lost to COVID, millions of lives affected by COVID. In this time where we have joined our hearts together, I invite us to open our ears to the sounds of memorial bells that were rung by Unitarian Universalist congregations and other congregations across the country as part of a COVID memorial this past Tuesday. Today and every day, may we remember so that we may heal. Amen. On Tuesday evening, communities came together to mourn, and on Wednesday, communities came together to look at the future. And this song was inspired by the poem, The Hill We Climb. I invite you to sing along as you start to learn it. The words will be on your screen.
Hey, you guys, Leah here. So I must be among millions, if not billions of people who tuned in to the inauguration yesterday on January 20th, 2021. And I was inspired by every moment of it, but especially wrapped and lifted, exalted, just completely fixated and moved by Amanda Gorman's poem, her presence, her beauty, her artistry. And so this song was born. There is always a light when we are ready to see it. There is always a light when we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There is always a light in the dark. We are ready to see it. There is always a light in the dark. We are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a gift. Together we will. There is always a light. There is always a light. We are ready to see it. There is always a light. There is always a light. We are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a gift. Together we will. There is always light. There is always light. See the light, to be the light, to shine the dark night and be a climb this hill. Together we will. There is always shine, there is always in the dark. There is always shine, there is always in the dark. Be the light.
Oops, try again. These are words of wisdom that came from one of you as a way to engage with children. And they have definitely become one of the most common phrases that I say to my 3.5-year-old Micah. Oops, try again. With children, we see how much they learn, see the learning that they do as they learn to sit up, learn to talk, learn to walk. Everything is new, and therefore everything is both hard and wondrous. They fall over, they make a mess, they hit with their big emotions, and so we say, oops, try again. And I find with my 3.5-year-old, we work together for how it is to try again. If he falls over, we check in. Is he hurt in body? We have to attend to our young people when they are hurt, be it in body or mind or spirit. And then we maybe give a little suggestion, pay attention to your body, and also this hole in the sidewalk. Or sometimes we're able to try again by making things silly and just starting to laugh. And sometimes he doesn't need our help at all. Sometimes he'll say, oops, try again after falling, and then walk literally back to the beginning and literally try again. It's amazing to see this human capacity to learn, to grow, to make mistakes and keep on going. And as I have witnessed my child learn everything, how to swallow, how to chew, everything is new, I realized, what if I was to say to myself, oops, try again? And so it's something I've started to do from time to time. Perhaps when words were said in anger and a relationship was injured, oops, try again. And it is hard to do that when we have perhaps been the one to cause harm accidentally, perhaps even on purpose. And there are other times that we can say, oops, try again to ourselves. If it's cooking a new recipe, if it's taking on a new activity like ice climbing, we will fall down. We heard in our story, Beautiful Oops, that we can make beauty out of mistakes. And this is in some ways contrary to our nature. We have inherited from our Puritan forebears here in Massachusetts a tendency towards perfectionism. It was part of their theology. These Puritans believed that it was preordained who would get into heaven. Not everyone would, and some would. They were called the elect. And the way that you showed that you were part of the elect was to live a fine, upstanding, perfect life. And so perfectionism became embedded in the core of our theology. And in many ways, the core of our culture, especially here in Massachusetts, where we have the first church or the first school or the most prestigious school. Perfectionism is in some ways the water that we swim in. But it can hurt us. It can keep us from having the creativity and the courage to try again. Yet our contemporary theology, our Unitarian Universalist heritage, affirms that we all have inherent worth, that we all have dignity, that we all have the capacity to bring goodness into the world, not because we are perfect, but because even with our imperfections, we are beautifully human. Even with our imperfections, we can create beauty, nourish relationships, learn new things. So perfectionism may be part of our Puritan heritage, but it need not be part of our contemporary theology or worldview. This is true in our relationship to ourselves and our relationship to one another. And what if we responded to our own mistakes, our own starts at something new with compassion, that we are beautiful, that we have worth and dignity, even when we don't quite know what we are doing, and rip some paper along the journey. We can extend this compassion to others as well, honoring their humanity. And then together, We can help one another see the beauty beyond the ripped piece of paper, see the possibilities. Creativity, curiosity, and compassion can be our friends and our teachers when we imagine what it is to try again. So perfectionism can damage our own sense of self, hold us back from trying new things. Perfectionism can damage our relationships when we judge one another for all the things we are not, rather than celebrating what we are. And perfectionism can also damage our society. A few of us this past week attended a workshop on understanding and confronting white supremacy culture. It was held in Quincy, virtually, put on by a group called Quincy for Justice. And as they talked us through some of the elements of white supremacy culture, that system we don't necessarily see because it is so much around us and within us. One of the elements of white supremacy culture that they named was perfectionism. And they talked about how perfectionism can be weaponized, that we look at people, especially people of color, and take every mistake, every infraction, and hold it against them as a reason to be sent to the principal's office, as a reason to look at someone as a criminal, as a reason to not give a promotion, as a reason to look badly at oneself. Perfectionism can be weaponized when we say you must be perfect, and everything you do in contrast to perfection will be held against you, a record that is hard to ever wipe clean. And in this workshop, they told us that perfectionism can also be a defensive weapon, something where white folks or folks in other positions of privilege and power can use perfectionism to hinder them from transformative change. A fear of not being able to do justice work correctly, that desire to do it well right from the beginning, can hold people back from ever jumping in. Participating in a community that is working for inclusivity, and that community floundering, sometimes people with power pull back. We didn't do it right. It's not worth even trying to do again. So perfectionism is something that it is important for us to recognize and work with in our hearts, our relationships, and our society as a whole. In her inaugural poem on Wednesday, The Hill We Climb, Amanda Gorman wrote, "And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose." Purpose, perhaps, is what we could strive for beyond perfection. When we come together with purpose, we create a willingness to say to ourselves and one another, oops, try again. Now, I do not mean to diminish the hundreds of years of exploitation and oppression on this continent as an oops. Yet in this present moment, so many of us look at the past and say, what does that have to do with me? I'm a good person, I'm trying. and in the ways that systemic oppression can somehow move through us, we often do hurt people unintentionally with microaggressions, the things we say without quite realizing their impact, mistakes. And in those cases, we can look at ourselves and one another and say, ouch, try again. And the trying again is hard. It means coming together, far from polished, far from pristine, listening to one another for the shared purpose, for the hurt, for the hope and the intention to create community and to learn together. Perhaps using humor and joy to help us walk across the room. Perhaps checking to see where we have hurt one another in body or spirit. And then, as we do try again, to celebrate one another for imperfectly growing. Friends on the journey, in this month where we celebrate imagination in this congregation, in this time when our country considers the possibilities for the future, let us look beyond the constraints of perfection that can so often hold us back from meaningful connection and transformative change. Let us try new things, even as adults. And when we mess up, let us help one another create beauty and learn again, try again to climb the hill. Remembering that each of us has an inner light, each of us, even ourselves, has that inherent worth and dignity. May we find purpose beyond perfection. Amen. And blessed be. I invite you to sing with me our hymn, Wake Now, My Senses. Clyde will paste the lyrics in the chat.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor, both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied.
As a voluntary association, our church is sustained through the gifts of this congregation. From the members also. Your generosity makes it possible for us to hold online worship services, workshops, and groups, even in these unusual times. Your generosity allows us to be faithful stewards of our historic building so that we'll be here and be a place of sanctuary and learning when it's once again safe to gather in person. Your generosity helps us strive for justice and allows us to live our congregation's values in the wider world. Please take this moment to visit our website and consider clicking on the donate button located on the homepage of our website, ufpc.org. Let us open our hearts as these gifts to support the good works of United First Parish Church are joyfully given and gratefully received.
Here at United First Parish Church, we gather on Sundays for our online worship and in other ways throughout the week and the month. You can download our announcement sheet from our website, and it's also emailed to the congregation on Thursdays or Fridays. As always, our Director of Religious Education, Joan McDonald, is creating children's chapel services for families to watch in their own time. They are excellent. You can download those or access those through our website. And if you have children in your life, whether or not they are your own children, consider watching this together. Our Black Lives Matter standouts continue on Thursday afternoons from 2 to 4 every week, meeting at the front of the church. And today we are having our mid-year congregational information meeting, our state of the congregation, an opportunity to hear from the board and myself about some of what's going on in our congregation and our denomination. So that will be happening in this Zoom room around 11:45. So we'll have time to connect with one another during our virtual coffee hour and then transition to the congregational meeting as we put democracy into practice in our congregation. And now let us return to that breath. And I invite you to place your hands over your heart for our words of benediction from John C. Morgan. Let us bless and keep one another. Let kindness rule in our hearts and compassion in our lives until we meet again. Amen. Please join me in singing Carry the Flame as we extinguish our chalice.